just started the recording now. That way then we can send it to all of you. So if you want to give it to others to watch and things like that, you can certainly feel free to do that. So what our goal to do here over the next 30 to 45 minutes is to go through Sage Paperless Construction. We'll spend a significant amount of time in the product showing you exactly how it works. We will give you a little bit of an overview. You will certainly, when we get to the end, I'll stop the recording. You'll be able to ask any detailed questions that you might like. So thanks again for your time today. I think most of you are very familiar with Cornerstone. You've been customers of ours, all three of you, for quite some time. One thing I just always like to point out from time to time is we don't just simply train on the product. We do a number of other types of consulting projects as well. Lately, we have spent quite a bit of time doing system reviews and archiving of data because we've got a lot of people who have been on the system for a number of years and have never really archived their data, and their business maybe has changed, so they haven't had a chance to kind of rework the software to work in the best way for them possible. So we do all of these other types of services that we offer as well. You work with Sage because you're in construction, and Sage is far and away the largest provider of construction software, construction accounting software in North America. Add about 2 new customers an hour, and frankly, add usually in 1 year more than our major competitors have in total customers. All right, so Sage Paperless Construction. What I really wanted to do here was just kind of start and talk about what some of the main features are. You know, a lot of these document management and so on systems have really gone through quite a metamorphosis over the last few years, and Sage Paperless is no different. I do want to go on record as saying, for those of you that saw TimberScan earlier today, you know, we believe in both products. That's why we offer both products. We think that they both have their own strengths and weaknesses along with it. So that's why we like to make sure that we show both products close to each other, so that way it's easy for you to go through and evaluate those products as you go. So I start with this slide because for most people, this is the main reason why they're looking for some sort of paperless system. They think of it primarily from an accounts payable function. I can tell you at Cornerstone, that's what we utilize it for. We utilize the paperless product, and we use it at this point from an accounts payable perspective. So it's this whole idea of receiving the invoices, capturing that data, routing all of that for approval, processing the payments, storing the data, retrieving it, and then providing reports. So when you think about paperless construction, this is the #1 function that people are trying to automate as part of this process. There's a lot more that can be done, and I'm going to show you a couple different environments of paperless and different things that it can do, and different interfaces and so on. But the idea here for most people is this is the #1 function that they're looking to automate. So, you know, as a matter of going through and doing that, then we now can get a look at a much more fully featured document management solution. So within your Sage product, whether you run 100 Contractor or 300 CRE, you've got all your data and documents stored in one place. Those typically start with what we call AP Flow. So AP Flow inside of Sage Paperless is just that, your accounts payable function. And what that looks like is very simply like this. This is just simply your typical Sage. But here is your paperless construction view. So the idea when you first start paperless construction, especially when you're talking about it from an AP flow perspective, is you've got a little dashboard here, maybe invoices by status, what's pending, what's approved, what's incomplete, approvals by job, so by job what's out there, and what's in an approved status and what's in a pending status for me, for Dom Pernay. So it's very easy to look at things that way. So when we talk about AP flow inside Sage Paperless, what we are primarily talking about are these main functions. And the idea is that it can be something as simple as entering an invoice and then approving it and then looking at that invoice in more detail. There is also a very nice check review feature inside Sage Paperless. So if you've got someone that's due to sign checks, rather than having to give them a stack of paper with all the backup and everything attached, there's a feature in here that allows them to come in, simply put in the range of checks that they're approving, and all of the backup displays on the screen for you. And then last is managing that AP flow. Think of this as really the setup of your AP flow and how it's going to work. So if we just start with something as simple as entering an invoice. So I've got an invoice that's been captured here. I'm going to fit it to the width of my screen so the font's bigger and easier for us to see. And then I simply can just come in and hit the Enter Invoice button. And now it opens up my AP entry screen. And at this point, all of my fields are linked, so it's pulling all of that data, in my case from Sage 300, but from either of the systems that you have it linked to. And you do have the ability to link to multiple data sets if you have multiple data sets. I grab my vendor, I put in an invoice ID, a description of it, and what's the date of my invoice? It's of course going to look at that vendor information to calculate their due date. If there were any discount, that would show as well. What's the amount of the invoice? And now I can simply come in here and say, I want to enter this. And it says, well, what do you want to enter it to? Do you want to enter it just as a simple GL expense, job cost it? Do you want it linked to a purchase order or subcontract or a piece of equipment? And these lines are user defined. And of course, I can have multiple lines, as many lines as I need, on any given invoice. So if I just do something simple here and pick job, now it opens up all the fields for me related to the job. I drill into my job, grab the project I want. It shows me the cost code list from that project. I do have an intelligent search capability here. So I can go in and begin to type a portion of what I'm after and find it that way. If that's what I want to do, I just have to be on the right column. It would help if I would do that. So you can index and search on any of the columns that you'd like to. And then in here, once I identify that, my categories obviously as well will display. And now it's already put the gross amount in for me of the invoice. If there's any tax, it's calculated it for me. And it knows that tax group based upon that job inside Sage 300. Or if I had put a tax group at the vendor level, it would pull that from there too. Although you typically wouldn't do that. You'd want it to retrieve from the job. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward here. If I need to see vendor history, I can simply pull up the vendor history right here inside the system if I'd like to. I can also add individual notes on this particular invoice if I need to, and put any new notes in that I need, and it will track that for me. If I needed to allocate this out, I could have a pre-configured allocation that the system would calculate for me as well. All the typical information that you would see when you go through to enter an invoice inside accounts payable. Now, also in here, I can go through and obviously I can save what I've done. Down here at the bottom, we get a whole new set of items. Is this a public invoice? Do I let everybody see it? Private or public? Do I want to go in and do the next invoice? Do I want to save what I've done, cancel what I've done? If I'm an approver, I can actually approve on this invoice. And I'm actually logged in as the administrator of the system. That's why I have that capability. I will show you in a minute what it looks like when someone doesn't have that approval capability and they're simply a processor. Then I can also route it for approvals. And when I hit my route button, what the system does is it takes this, and if I've got an invoice, if I've got a routing rule that's been set up for that vendor or that job or whatever the case may be, the system will drop those in for me and will automatically route it based upon that. So you can certainly have predefined routing rules as part of Sage Paperless to have the system automatically go through and route those invoices along for you. If I want to do a one-off, I can simply come in here and say I want to add an approver. I'm going to add myself here. I can put any notes on it here, you know, please pay attention to whatever. You know, that type of thing, assign it, and now the system will take that invoice and route it for me. And notice, of course, it puts that note out there for me as well. Now, in my case, I'm the reviewer. I also have I'm logged in that way, so I can actually approve it at this time. I'm going to say no for right now to show you what happens. So that, in and of itself, is kind of your quick and easy way to go through and enter those invoices for you. And of course, when I hit refresh, now all of my different pie charts and everything will go ahead and update for me here as well. So pretty simple, pretty easy to do that. Now, as I mentioned, that's kind of a quick and easy way to show it. Also in here, you've got a whole variety of ways to retrieve data. So to capture data. I can open a file, I can use a scanner, a batch, I can do mass indexing. So if I get a whole group of invoices in that are all related to the same job, I can go through and I can choose to do a mass indexing of all of those invoices together by coding them to the same job, if that's what I'd like to do. So it's pretty easy to go through and identify things that way. So I don't want you to think that you have to go through and grab each invoice one by one and code them the way that I did. One other thing to mention, I think this is also quite important for everybody to be aware of, and that is that there is an OCR capability. We'll get to that as we go. We'll discuss that as we go along here toward the end, but I wanted to make sure that everybody is aware there is certainly an OCR capability within Sage Paperless. Okay, so it's kind of our first little overview. AP flow, we had an invoice, we captured it, we put in what information we knew, which in this case was quite a lot, and then routed it for an approval. All right, we'll go back in and continue that in a minute, but we'll go through there. The next side of this is also what's called document routing. So the idea then behind document routing is such that now what I'm able to do is not just route AP invoices, but also go through and route other types of documents as well. So if I come in here and say open a file, and if I've got a given change order that I want to open, now I have the ability to take this document. Once again, we'll just fit the width over here so we can see it. A pretty familiar looking type of document here. But now I can take this information and I can go through and do a document routing on it. And so now what this will allow me to do is take this and go through and decide what type of document it is that I need to go through and route and approve. So I can pick whose queue it goes to. Sorry, just 1 second here. That one's fine. There it is. That's the one I wanted. Sorry, just 1 second. So that one's already actually in routing. 1 second here, we'll come back. We'll do this a little bit differently. There we go. Sorry, I grabbed the wrong thing there. And I index the document and tell it what type of document it is. So you'll notice in here, you have a whole series of document types that you can work with. You're not simply limited to potential change orders, which is what this one happens to be, but it could be anything related to owner contracts, payroll information, you get the idea, whatever the case may be. Job photos, drawing logs, so on and so forth. So yeah, you have an unlimited list of document types that you can work with. And when you go through and then pick the document type that you want, then what the system does is it opens up fields for you to go through and enter. And I can go through and identify the job that it's for. And notice when I drop in the job, it goes through and puts in what job it is for me. What change order is it? In this case, it's change order 3. And what type is it? I can drop that in there as well. The description, so on and so forth. So we can link any of these files that we'd like into the Sage 300 CRE database if that's what we want to do. Or if there's other fields that we want to be informational so that whenever we come back in here to retrieve data, we can do that as well. So not everything has to tie back into the Sage 300 database. And then from here, once I index it, we identify that. Okay, I've made a couple of these fields required fields. Now I can put in a subject for this, and I can simply say job, food warehouse, PCO 3, and then pick who my other approvers are. So I can identify who's going to approve it, return to me when it's completed, and hit route. So it's that simple to capture another document, utilize the indexer, and within that indexer, identify the type of document is and route it for approvals. So that allows me to handle, obviously, not just accounts payable files, but route things all the way around with all different types of documents as well. Okay? All right. So, as we said, these were kind of our traditional items, the AP flow with all your invoices, document route with any other type of documents as well. And then from here, all of this data is currently housed on premise. This is loaded on your server as part of a server-based application. All right. Now we also have paperless cloud services. We have eCapture, which does both invoices and receipts, eForms, which can do other types of user-defined forms. We're not going to go into those today. I'm just going to chat about those. What those allow you to do is to create user-defined forms for things like daily logs and things like that as well. And then we also have a portal, which allow people to come in and review invoices and documents. So down at the bottom, the AP flow and the doc route, people can go on web-based interfaces on their phones or on laptops and do all of their approvals that way, if that's what they would prefer to do. And all of that is web-based. So the suite now is made up of both server-based applications as well as web-based applications as well. And as you probably are aware, eCapture means capture invoice and receipt information through a camera on your phone or whatever the case may be. And eForms is a user-defined forms capability. And then also on the portal, allow people to use the web or utilize their phone to do those approvals that we've set up in AP Flow and Doc Route. Okay? That's kind of the overall suite and how that looks. Now, the next piece here is what's called Flexi Capture, and that is more along the lines of your OCR type capture. So within that, this is all about the OCR. It allows to pull data from scanners, fax, email, mobile devices. So that's the same for all of our documents. I should say when it comes to email, what most companies do is set up an email address called AP@ and their domain name, have all the AP invoices come into that email address, because then Sage Paperless will grab those documents automatically and store them waiting to be indexed in the system. Then we can extract the header, footer, and line items and validate the data through the OCR capability. We also do have the ability to match to purchase orders. I'll show you that here in just a moment. On-the-fly training. And what's nice is extendable to new fields and document types. So if you add your own document types in and have user-defined fields in there, you have that capability to add those into your OCR system. So kind of a typical example, invoice date and number, name and address of the buyer, the supplier, delivery date. If there's purchase order data, grab that as well, the detailed line items, and then our totals. As I said, I just wanted to kind of let you know that that piece is available. It is an add-on, so it is an additional price for the OCR capability, but I wanted to make sure that we at least mentioned it so that everybody knew that it was available. All right, so overall, what Paperless allows you to do is kind of reduce a lot of paperwork and administrative overhead and eliminate the need for paper files. Certainly, you're going to save time and improve productivity and efficiencies, because now you don't have a bunch of manual codings going on. Everything's really kind of handled all at once. All right, so now let's jump back into the system here. So we just showed you the real basics around the AP side. Let's take that just a little bit further here. So if we go into AP Flow, if I go into the first item here and want to manage everything, what you do is you see each one of your users. This is where you're able to go through and set their individual roles within here. So the idea then is that you're able to very easily identify who processes, who reviews, and who's a supervisor in here. And obviously, people can have multiple roles identified to them. And then notice, do you allow a processor to just approve? Do you allow them to import and export data? Default routing rule override. So if I'm a processor that enters AP and something comes in and I don't want it to follow the standard routing rules, I can change that if this box has been checked. If this box hasn't been checked, I'm not able to change that default routing rule. And will we allow processors to delete invoices as well? Allow edit line types and edit invoices and multiple select of multiple invoices at once, all of those types of things. So there's quite a bit of setup work that you're able to do in here. You can even also establish proxy users. So if someone isn't available, who can do their job for them? Document matching. So I'm going to insist that whenever something comes in that's a credit card, that a receipt is attached. So it's not going to let me to enter it without a picture or image of that receipt that's been taken along with it. And most of that's done in the mobile side as well. Here's my invoice routing. I can set job routing here. So I can say, based upon this job and based upon this dollar amount, here's who my approvers are. So you can build different levels of approvals that are both job and dollar amount variables. So it reviews that information. It reviews those variables to identify who approves what when. So therefore, in this case, if the invoice is less than $5,000, it doesn't have to go to that next level of approver. Okay? So in here, this is where that actual detail gets established. All right. So we saw the very simple enter an invoice. Approving an invoice, quite straightforward as well. The system just goes through, looks up based upon who you are, and shows any documents out there that you have for approval. And you're able to go through, see the information here. If there has been additional items like a purchase order attached, I'd be able to see that here as well. I haven't scanned any at this point. But I could see all of that in here if I'd like to. And then simply, come in and identify what I'd like to do. So I always like to do the fit the width because it's just easier for me to see everything. I can look at any alerts that have been set up on it, all of those types of things. So it becomes very simple, very easy for somebody to come in and see those related documents and then see their pendings and approve them. Now, I did that first one by just hitting approve. What I also like people to see is now when it goes to the next one, I can reject it. I can put it on hold. I can put in that there are issues with it, and then I have to identify what those issues are. So I add a note to identify those issues, if that's what I'd like to do. Look for supporting documents, the detailed invoice information, so I can see the vendor information here, who's my other reviewers, where does it stand with them, who is the person that actually processed it. So if I have a question for them as well, if I want to route it further, if I have that security capability, I can do that. And then you'll notice down here, it's actually showing me where it was coded. So if I need to change that coding, I can do that provided I have that security setting that way. Okay? And then mark it as approved from there. So pretty easy to go through the approval process. As you can see, the system just rolls through from one invoice to the next and allows you to go through and make whatever changes you need, show you your supporting documentation, so on. I'll answer that question in just 1 minute, Jody. Thank you very much for that. And then also in here, if I look at Invoice Manager, what this allows me to do, this is more like an administrator capability. I want to see everything in the system that's incomplete. So somebody who's entered a bunch of data but actually hasn't finished entering any of it, I can do that. Or I want to come in and I want to see what ones are in the midst of being routed for approvals. You know, that type of thing. What ones have been approved, so on and so on and so on. What ones have been rejected. So if anything's been rejected and sent back, I can see why. So it's very easy to find the data that you're looking for. When I go to my approves, I can obviously see anything I need to about any of them. When I hit export, whoop, that's the step that sends it over to Sage 300 for me. So do want you to be aware that there is a step you can automate it, but it does actually run through an export and then write the data right into the accounts payable module inside Sage 300. Okay. All right. So Jody had asked by typing in the comments up here, how long has Sage Paperless been around and how many companies, how many users? Sage Paperless has been around for quite some time. It was actually known as Paperless Environments in the past, and Sage acquired the company about, I want to say about 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, something like that. At this point, there are just over 3,000 users of Sage Paperless. It has been used for both 100 and 300 that entire time when it was on its own, and obviously now it's grown pretty significantly since it's been acquired by Sage. Okay. All right. So also in here, sorry, I went to the wrong environment, but yeah, you get the idea here. I just don't have as much data there. Sorry. So then I've got all the different routings in here that we can do, all that kind of stuff. The other thing, and this is a piece that I like, is very easy to search for data. So if I want to come in and I want to grab all different document types, I can come in and grab for a certain group of dates. I could come in and say, you know, for a particular job or vendor or whatever the case may be. Let's just come in here and grab a job. There we go. So I could come in here and drop in a job number, and then when I hit search, the system goes through and shows me any documents I have that are related to that job. So it's going to show me pending change orders, accounts payable invoices, whatever the case may be. And you've probably noticed that when I hover over something, the image of that document shows up for me right away. I can take any of these then and route them, view them, email them, print them, save them to file, create a report, whatever the case may be. So it becomes very easy. I'm going to grab a different job here and hit search. So it becomes very easy for me to go through and pull together all of the different invoices, change orders, whatever the case may be, that are right within the system. Very easy for me to save it and drop it to a jump drive or something like that as well. So I did all document types. Obviously, I can come in and grab a detailed document as well. So I say, just show me all the AP invoices and so on. So to get to the data, very simple, very easy. Of course, it takes images of all the data and sends those over to Sage 300. So when you're in Sage 300 and hit your paperclip, all of your invoices are attached there, or change orders, or whatever sort of document you've saved within the system. Okay? You can Jody asked one more question. You can download all the invoices at once. So you do have the ability, when you hit that search, to just hit download. You can download all the invoices at the same time. So you do not have to do them individually. Okay? Also in here, you do have the ability, obviously, to play with your images when they come in, insert pages, delete pages. If you're storing subcontract agreements and things like that, you can decide, you know, if there were other attachments that you didn't need, you can delete those, all of that kind of stuff as well. All right. With that, let's take a minute. Let's open it up for any other questions. Does anybody else have any questions?
I had a question regarding the hold. If you have something on hold, are there capabilities where you can still post the invoice, just not process payment?
So it depends. And the reason I say it depends is that if you've done all of your coding, yes, even though it's marked on hold, you can still push it through and post it into Sage and flag it on hold. If you haven't done all the coding, then it's not going to let you do that.
Okay, that leads me to the next question. Can you not complete the coding but send it over for approval?
No, all the approval would take place in Sage Paperless.
Okay, so can I enter an invoice in and not put a code in because I don't know where my project manager necessarily wants it coded, and send it to him for review, and then he could put the proper coding in it?
Yes. Yeah, that was what I was doing when I hit that approval screen and I actually changed the cost code. If that cost code had been blank or not, I have the ability as the PM to change that and post and push it through.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, great.